Hello everyone and welcome to Old Timey Comics, where we head back into the past of superhero comics to check out all the good, the bad, and the absolutely ridiculous. All alterations to the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. Today we go to September of 1962 and journey into mystery number 84 to check in on Donald Blake and his alter ego of Thor, God of Thunder. This issue, Thor fights his greatest foe yet, the Executioner. Wait, no, not the Asgardian Executioner, it's actually this guy. That's not going to be confusing at all. Speaking of executions, Donald Blake has been brought before a firing wall, but laments that he can't turn into Thor because that would reveal his identity to everyone there. So you're telling me he'd rather die than just save himself and pretty much become Thor full-time. Meanwhile, we get a quick look back at last issue of Journey into Mystery and the origin of Thor, with Donald Blake finding a cane, using said cane to turn into Thor, and then as the God of Thunder, fighting off the invading stone men of Saturn. Just as quickly, we move to the present as the good doctor has returned to America from his rather interesting vacation in the Netherlands. He's back to treating patients and working with his nurse, Jane Foster. Unfortunately, but also unsurprisingly, Jane Foster is not a very three-dimensional character. She only exists to be a love interest for Don as he pines after her, but oh, she could never love a man who has to walk with a cane. Well, turns out the exact opposite is true, as Jane does love Dr. Blake. Oh, if he'd only ask. In other words, this relationship is never going to actually go anywhere anytime soon because she could never ask him out instead of the other way around. That would be improper for a lady. Jane fills Donald in that since he's been gone, revolution has broken out in the fictional South American country of San Diablo. That'd be Spanish for Saint Devil. Not really sure what to make of that. Anyway, the country is currently under the control of the communist tyrant, the Executioner, named such for all of the people he sentenced to the execution wall. Due to all the fighting, many have been injured or are falling ill, and there's an extreme shortage of doctors in San Diablo. Thus, Dr. Blake, along with a number of other doctors, volunteers to head down there to supply aid. Jane comes along as well, and soon everyone is sailing on their way to San Diablo. Unfortunately, the Executioner has caught wind of the incoming medical aid and ordered an airstrike down on their ship. According to the pilots, the theory is that if the peasants remain sick, they can't revolt. I don't want to argue with someone nicknamed the Executioner on how to run a dictatorship, but isn't it easier to simply accept the aid and take credit for it to win the hearts of the people? Easier to rule over people when they like you. If they find out he destroyed the ability for their families to get medical aid, the peasants are only going to revolt even more. But hey, I'm not a South American dictator, so let's move on. Dr. Blake runs around the corner and strikes his can on the ground in order to become Thor and leaps into the fray. One thing that's actually impressive about the comic is the clear attempt to accurately portray the military weapons of the Soviet Union. Like these planes I originally thought just looked silly, turns out that, deeper color aside, they're a dead ringer for the Mikoyan Gurevik or MiG-17. Unfortunately, they also continue to completely disregard physics as Thor somehow curves his trajectory in mid-air in order to land on a fighter jet capable of flying over 700 miles per hour. Somehow managing to remain standing on the MiG even though the air pressure would surely blow him off, Thor smashes the plane in half with a single strike before turning his attention to the other MiGs. Thor decides to kill a few birds with one stone and begins spinning his hammer so fast that he somehow generates a tornado. Not only that, but a tornado capable of stopping the MiGs in their tracks and pulling them towards him. Now, it's a bit difficult to estimate the speed the hammer has to be spinning at, as tornadoes aren't classified by wind speed like a hurricane. Instead, they're measured by the Fujita scale, which ranks them based on ground level property damage, which is kind of hard to apply here. But regardless, to be able to stop the planes mid-flight and pull them towards Thor, those MiGs should be torn apart and those pilots are probably dead. And I mean, Thor proceeds to smash them anyway, just in a way that all the pilots happen to escape unharmed. As the last MiG falls, Thor dives into the water before turning back into Donald Blake, claiming he fell over the side in all the excitement. Seems a bit overboard for establishing an alibi. Heh, overboard. No, I'm not going to apologize for my boat puns. The other passengers fill Dr. Blake in on the appearance of Thor, while Jane comments on how handsome and dreamy he was. Over in San Diablo, the Executioner is not pleased at all this pilots failed to stop the ship of American doctors. In his mind, this means the pilot's commander is responsible and is thus executed by firing squad. The Executioner then threatens the same to his other officers if their subordinates fail to stop the Americans. I feel like this would have the exact opposite effect on the Soviet officers. If their men fail and they know they'll be killed for it, they would just desert in order to keep their lives. Plus, if you constantly execute your staff, it just lowers overall competence and military might. I know we have to drive home that he's a bad guy, but was any military leader really that dumb? After the doctors land in San Diablo, they soon come under fire from hidden snipers in the mountains. Dr. Blake doesn't even need to turn to Thor as he taps his can a couple times in order to summon a thunderstorm, effectively blinding the soldiers while the doctors make their escape. However, the snipers are soon followed up by tanks. Don changes into Thor and uproots a tree. Now just like the MiGs before, accurate depiction of a T-62 Soviet tank, inaccurate depiction of physics since that tree would snap under his 37-ton weight. Thor hits the last tank with his hammer, and like a Saturday morning cartoon, the vibrations somehow cause the tank to simply shake itself apart. And for a really useless nitpick, the T-62 is operated by a 4-person crew rather than 5, but I've poked fun at less, like how disappointed they look rather than scared. Aw man, now we gotta go to the firing squad. But oh no, while Thor was dealing with the tanks, another contingent of the Executioner's men have captured Jane and threatened to kill her unless Thor leaves. So that's what he does. Thus, Donald Blake returns, only to be captured himself and brought before the Executioner, who takes his cane away and orders him to be executed. I mean, what did you expect? Though he says he might make an exception if the lovely Jane Foster promises to marry him. Ugh, we're out to hit every bad female character / damsel in distress trope right now, aren't we? Thinking fast, Don calls the Executioner out as a coward to rile him up so he can take back his cane before striking the ground, causing a blinding flash of light. So the whole can't turn into Thor thing on the cover was just a bunch of sensationalism to sell comics. Why am I not surprised? Then again, one second Donald Blake is standing there, and the next, there's Thor. And nobody can put 2 and 2 together on this one? Thor quickly throws his hammer, picking up a nearby tent and dropping it on the Executioner's men before causing a nearby volcano to erupt by hitting it with a lightning strike. I don't know about lightning causing eruptions, but eruptions can cause volcanic lightning, which is awesome, and you should check it out after this. In the ensuing panic, the Executioner is caught attempting to abscond with his army's money so that he can be ironically gunned down in front of his own firing wall. Back in the States, Jane questions Dr. Blake about what he was doing while Thor took on the communists. Donald answers that he was hiding behind the firing wall, causing Jane to lament, wishing the doctor could be brave and adventurous like Thor. Sure, lame doctor with a stick versus an entire army with machine guns. That would have been a fair fight. Not to mention comparing a normal person to a super powerful being of Norse mythology is completely fair too, right? Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to show your support, or check out Old Timey Comics on Patreon to truly help the show to grow. Have a character or story you'd like to see covered in an episode? Let me know in the comments. If you want to check out this story for yourself, you can do so either through a subscription to Marvel Unlimited or by purchasing it digitally. Stay tuned for the next episode of Old Timey Comics.